For more than 30 years, people have been asking the same question about Home Alone. How in the world did Kevin McCallister's dad afford that giant Chicago mansion? Luxuriously furnished, by the way, 4 kids, everyone wearing fashionable clothing, a trip to Paris and to Florida, an entire house full of toys, without what seemed like having to ever go to work. Well, in this episode, we're going to solve that mystery. You're not going to believe this, but the answer has been hiding in the background of one of the Home Alone films. In a detail only a Gen X kid who grew up loving books would recognize. I'm John, aka That 80s Dude, and this is Nostalgia Nation, where Gen X kids and older millennials gather to overthink the movies we grew up with and pretend it's research. And where I share my physical media collection and other rad nostalgic stuff. And yes, I finally know what Kevin's dad did for a living. You know, if you're watching this, I think you're a lot like me. Do you find yourself spending way too much time pausing movies to stare at background props or other details? Are you also in love with extended features and director commentary? I've been addicted to this kind of stuff ever since I could remember. And this is something that we don't really get anymore, save for a few boutique restoration and distribution companies. This is why we collect physical media, and why I hope more companies pop up to produce physical media forever. Most importantly, I think the future of film commentary will come from film lovers like you and I. So when you're watching movies, look around. Sometimes the coolest secrets are in the hidden details. And on that note, we're driving into one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of holiday cinema. What does Peter McCallister actually do for work? Because for decades, the internet has had answers like, he's in business. He's in finance. He's a real estate mogul. Or one of my personal favorite theories is he's definitely in the mob. Because yeah, 90s Chicago, giant house, mysterious job, the math kind of does itself. Now, those are good theories. Fun, for sure. But I stumbled on something that's not theoretical. It's evidence. Visible on screen, 100% there if you know what you're looking at. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Okay, let's start with the obvious. The McCallisters are loaded. You've got the giant brick house in a wealthy Chicago suburb, 4 kids dressed like they're on the cover of a 1990 Ralph Lauren catalog, a house full of toys, electronics, and random luxury clutter, extended family trips to Paris, Florida, like it's just a thing we do. And we never actually see Peter go into the office or talk about work or have really much of stress about anything, right? So there's no briefcase, no I've, got this report to turn in, nothing. He's just there, calm, in charge, and paying for everything, right? Doesn't lose his cool after finding out he's got to pay for more travel, and their vacation ends before it even starts, in both films, by the way. And his son went on a spending spree using his credit card. Who cares? He's loaded. So going back to all those theories, the problem with them is that there was really no tangible evidence in the film for any of them. Those theories of what Peter McCallister does are just a fill-in-the-gaps kind of thing. But I sort of love that because it's just part of the lore, right? But then, last year, I'm watching Home Alone 2, like all of you do around Christmas time, and there's this tiny moment that completely blew all those theories up for me. I rewound, watched the scene again, paused, rewound again, and paused again, and I couldn't believe it. It was right there in our faces all along. Okay, so do you remember the Buzz apology scene in Home Alone 2? Kevin's family is in the living room of their fancy home. Buzz gives that fake apology. Kevin gives his very real, scorched earth response. Everyone freaks out. Well, it's right there. Right in that scene, just behind Buzz and Kevin in this big glass front cabinet shelf. And sitting right inside the cabinet behind the glass are these huge, matching hardbound volumes that appear to be legal reports. A whole run of them. When I saw that, my brain did that 80s kid flashback thing, okay? Because if you grew up in that time and you ever watched a law commercial, or let's just say you went into a law office for whatever reason, and maybe you got taken to Uncle So-and-so's office downtown, and you know those books, okay? And after extensive searching of images online, I found these books resemble Northwestern University law books. Not random books, mind you, not business books either. I read a lot of John Grisham, okay? We're talking about legal reporters, state statutes, annotated case law, the kind of stuff that would only be useful to an attorney. And here's the thing about 80s law books. Normal people don't typically own them. Nobody's dad was at home in a polo shirt like, yeah, I keep a full set of Illinois case reporters in the den just in case Monopoly gets boring, okay? So in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s, those giant hardbound volumes basically lived in three places. They were either in law firms, judges' chambers, and the home offices of, lawyers who really wanted clients to know they were serious. They were expensive. They took up tons of space, and they were kind of a flex. And they all had the same aesthetic, okay? So plenty of bold red or burgundy and black, dignified gold leaf, usually from West Publishing or similar. The second I saw those books behind Buzz and Kevin in Home Alone 2, I was like, wait, that's not random production design. That's a law library flex in the living room. And because we're Gen X, we actually remember what those shelves looked and smelled like. And older millennials might barely catch it. Anyone born after, say, 1995, to them it just looks like old-timey books. To us, it's a sign that someone in this house is likely practicing law. Okay, so at this point, I know what some of you are thinking. All right, John, cool theory, but how likely is this really? And that's when I did the most Gen X thing possible. I went looking for data, because like you, I'm the suspicious type. Because if the McCallister house is in Winnetka, Illinois, which it is, then we're not talking about some random suburb, right? We're talking about one of the most affluent North Shore communities outside of Chicago. So I had to ask a very specific question. How plausible was it, statistically, that a wealthy Winnetka dad in the early 1990s was a lawyer? I started digging into census data, historical attorney rolls, and county-level business stats from that era. And here's what jumped out immediately. Cook County has long been one of the most lawyer-dense counties in the entire country. I've been there, and I've been to law offices there. Even back in the 80s and 90s, the overwhelming majority of Illinois attorneys were concentrated right there, feeding into downtown Chicago firms and North Shore satellite offices. Okay, so what that means is if you lived in Winnetka in 1990 and you had serious money, lawyer wasn't some random case profession. It was one of the most statistically common high-income careers in that exact ecosystem. So before we even get to the bookshelf, Peter McCallister being a lawyer already makes sense. But once you factor in the bookshelf, the odds shift hard. And you know what else hits hard? Do you know what's less than 45 minutes drive from the McCallister home? You got it. Northwestern School of Law. So look, normal people didn't keep those at home. Not executives, not business guys, not finance bros. Lawyers did. So if I had to put a number on it, and yes, I absolutely did, I'd say this. Without the bookshelf, Peter being a lawyer is a solid maybe. With the bookshelf, you're suddenly in more likely than not territory. Which means this isn't just a fun theory anymore. It's the most boring and therefore most believable answer to a question we've been asking for over 30 years. Turns out, Kevin's dad wasn't a mob boss. He was just a very successful Chicago lawyer with great taste in bookshelves. Or maybe he was a lawyer, just not the kind of clients you put on a Christmas card list. All right, so why did it take this long for us to figure this out? Well, partly because when we first watched these movies, we were kids. We weren't looking at the bookshelf behind Buzz. We were focused on the pranks, the traps, the talk boy, the terrifying furnace in the basement in the first film, Buzz calling Kevin a trout sniffer. I mean, This was a family movie, by the way. Also, on VHS and early TV broadcasts, that background cabinet is just a blur of dark shapes. It's really tough to see inside the cabinet. You couldn't see spine detail unless you had the world's most overachieving CRT. Now, we're watching 4K restorations on 60-inch screens, pausing to see if that one NES game on the shelf is a legit cartridge or a fake label. Look, you combine our adult brains plus modern resolution plus 80s living experience, and that suddenly, the props start talking to you. And in this case, they're saying, hey, Peter McCallister isn't a mob boss. He's something far more realistic for a rich Chicago dad in the 90s. He's a lawyer, which, depending on your feelings about lawyers, may or may not be better than the mob. To me, this is the fun part of being a nostalgia-obsessed adult, okay? So we're not just rewatching these movies for comfort. We're rewatching them with new eyes. We're bringing decades of life experience back to the stuff we first saw when we were 8. Listen, the kids us just saw a Christmas movie, but the adult us goes, hang on, those are 80s legal books. My friend's dad had those in his office. Wait a second. So yes, I'm absolutely planting my flag that Peter McCallister, father of Kevin, calmest man in every crisis, it seems, is an attorney. Okay, so it's not official canon, obviously, and, it's not in some wiki footnote. And the only place that really matters, in my opinion, the set design. And honestly, that explains the money. So the real question is, what do you think, all right? Let me know in the comments. Do you buy the lawyer dad thing, okay? Or are you still riding with the secret mob boss of Chicago holiday crime syndicate thing, okay? Let me know, okay? Thanks for hanging out with me in this video where I apparently now do forensic background prop analysis as a hobby. And hey, if you enjoyed this little investigation, do me a favor, hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And share this episode with the friend in your life who always complains, how could they afford that house? And hey, you can always find me on Instagram at that80sdude. And then you can read the newsletter at that80sdude.com. And hey, until next time, keep your VHS rewound and your physical media alphabetized. See you in the next episode. Stay rad.
Yeah, I know some people fight it.